The town of Willow Creek was quiet that morning, its dusty main street bathed in a golden haze from the rising sun. Clara Harper sat on the edge of the old wooden porch of her family's abandoned farmhouse, her knees drawn to her chest. Her younger brother Tommy and little sister Rose were still asleep inside on the floor. At only 19, Clara had been forced into the role of mother, father, and protector. Their parents had died in a fever outbreak the year before, leaving Clara with the responsibility of keeping her siblings fed and safe. But the farm was falling apart. The roof leaked, the barn had half collapsed in the last storm, and there wasn't much left to harvest. Clara clenched her jaw. She couldn't give up. She wouldn't let Tommy and Rose starve. A distant sound of hoofbeats broke the silence. Clara stood and shaded her eyes as a rider approached. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a worn hat and a weathered face that spoke of hard years under the sun. His horse slowed as he reached the gate, and he dismounted with an easy grace. "You Clara Harper?" he asked, his voice low but kind. "Yes," she said, wary. "Name's Daniel Reed. I run the Double R Ranch just north of here." Clara's heart sank. She thought he might be here to collect a debt or claim the land. Instead, Daniel looked past her toward the sagging house. "Heard about what happened to your folks. Thought you might need some help." Clara swallowed hard. People had offered charity before, but charity didn't last. "We don't need pity," she said stubbornly. Daniel's lips curved into a small smile. "Good, 'cause I'm not offering pity. I'm offering a job. Come work at the ranch. Bring your brother and sister. I could use an extra hand." It wasn't an easy choice, but by the next morning, Clara had packed what little they had and led her siblings toward the Double R Ranch. The ranch was alive with the sounds of cattle, the smell of fresh hay, and the buzz of ranch hands working. For the first time in months, Clara felt safe. Tommy immediately ran off to see the horses, while little Rose clung to Clara's skirt. Wide-eyed but curious, Daniel introduced them to the ranch cook, Mrs. Potter, who fussed over them like a mother hen. "You'll earn your keep," Daniel said, looking Clara in the eye, "but you'll also have a roof over your heads and food on the table. That sound fair?" Clara nodded, fighting back tears of relief. Days turned into weeks. Clara worked hard, mending fences, feeding animals, and learning the rhythm of ranch life. Daniel was patient but firm, teaching her how to ride, rope, and even shoot when danger lurked near the property. One evening after a long day, they sat by the campfire under a sky full of stars. "You've got grit," Daniel said quietly. Clara glanced at him, surprised. "You didn't just survive out there," he continued. "You kept those kids alive. That takes strength most men don't have." Her throat tightened. She wasn't used to praise. "They're all I've got," she whispered. Daniel's gaze softened. Not anymore. Their peace didn't last forever. A neighboring landowner, Mr. Garrison, had been trying to buy out small farms for months. When Clara refused to sell her family's land, he wasn't happy. One night, Daniel found the barn doors open and one of the horses missing. Tracks led toward Garrison's property. "This is a warning," Daniel said grimly. "He wants to scare you into giving up that land." Clara's heart pounded. "What if he comes back? Then he'll have to go through me," Daniel said, his jaw set. The next day, Garrison himself rode up with 2 men. "That land is worthless," he sneered. "Sell it before something worse happens." Clara stood tall, Tommy and Rose peeking from the porch. "We're not selling," she said firmly. Daniel stepped beside her, hand resting near his holster. "You heard the lady," he said evenly. Garrison scowled but eventually turned his horse. "You'll regret this." Clara's knees trembled, but Daniel's hand on her shoulder steadied her. "You don't stand alone anymore," he said quietly. Weeks later, after repairs were made and peace restored, Daniel invited Clara and her siblings to a Sunday picnic on the ranch's highest hill. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky with gold and pink, Daniel turned to Clara. "You've made this place feel like home again," he said softly. "It feels like home because of you," she admitted. He smiled, then took her hand. "I've been thinking. I'd like to give you and those kids more than just a place to stay. I'd like to give you a family name." "My name," Clara's breath caught. "You mean?" Daniel nodded. "Marry me, Clara." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were happy ones. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Daniel." Tommy and Rose cheered, and the ranch hands whooped from the distance. For the first time in a long time, Clara didn't just feel safe. She felt loved. Months later, Clara stood on the porch of the Double R Ranch, now her home, watching Tommy and Rose chase each other across the field. Daniel stepped up behind her and wrapped an arm around her waist. "Looks like they finally belong somewhere," he said. "So do I," Clara replied with a smile. The Wild West had taken so much from her, but it had also given her everything she never knew she needed. A family, a future, and a love that would last forever. Clara woke before dawn now, not out of worry but out of habit. She'd learned to love the stillness of the ranch before the day began. Daniel was already saddling his horse when she came. "Outside. You're up early," he said with a grin. "I wanted to ride with you," she replied, pulling on her boots. They rode together in comfortable silence, the morning air crisp, the prairie glowing with the first light of day. Daniel slowed his horse near the cattle pen. "Never thought I'd have someone to share this with," he admitted. Clara smiled softly. "Never thought I'd have a home to share." Their eyes met, a quiet promise passing between them. Just when life felt steady, trouble returned. One evening, a rider arrived breathless with news. Mr. Garrison had been spotted near the Harper land with strangers in tow. Daniel's expression darkened. "He's trying again," Clara's heart pounded. "What does he want now?" Daniel grabbed his hat. "Whatever it is, he won't get it. Not while I'm around." But Clara felt the old fear creeping in. What if Garrison took revenge? What if he hurt Daniel and her siblings? 2 days later, Garrison showed up at the ranch with 3 hired guns. "This is your last chance, Reed," Garrison sneered. "Sign the land over or you'll wish you had." Daniel stood his ground, his hand hovering near his holster. Clara stepped forward before he could speak. "You can't scare us anymore," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "That land isn't just dirt to me. It's the last piece of my parents I have, and I will not give it up." Daniel's eyes gleamed with pride at her courage. Garrison spat on the ground. "This isn't over." When he finally rode away, Clara's legs went weak, and Daniel caught her. "You were brave today," he murmured. "I was terrified," she confessed. "That's what makes it brave," he said softly. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She slipped out to the porch, staring at the stars. Daniel found her there. "You're thinking too much again," he said gently, sitting beside her. "I'm just scared of losing everything," she admitted. Daniel took her hand. "You've already survived the worst life could throw at you, Clara, and you don't have to face it alone anymore. Not ever again." For the first time, Clara let herself lean on him, truly feeling that she wasn't carrying this burden by herself. Months passed and Garrison's threats faded away. Rumor had it he sold his property and left town. One bright spring morning, Clara found herself watching Rose and Tommy race each other across the pasture. The sound of their laughter filled the air, no longer weighed down by fear or hunger. Daniel came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her. "Thinking about the future?" he asked. Clara nodded. "For the first time." "It feels bright," Daniel smiled. "Good, because we've got a wedding to plan." Clara laughed, a clear, beautiful sound that carried across the ranch. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was living. The wedding was simple but beautiful. They held it under a giant oak tree near the ranch house with friends, neighbors, and ranch hands gathered. Tommy walked Clara down the aisle, proud as could be. Rose carried wildflowers. When Daniel took Clara's hands, his voice caught. "I never thought I'd find someone who could make this ranch and this life feel like home again," he said. "And I never thought I'd find someone who could make me believe in tomorrow again," Clara replied, tears shining in her eyes. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, cheers erupted across the ranch. For Clara, it felt like the final piece of her broken world had been put back together. Years later, Clara would stand on the same porch and watch her own children play where Tommy and Rose once had. The Double R Ranch had grown, but it wasn't the land or the cattle that made it special. It was the love that filled every corner of it, a love that had saved her and her siblings from a lonely fate and given them a future. Clara turned toward Daniel, who was leaning against the porch rail, watching her with that familiar, quiet smile. "You thinking too much again?" he teased. She grinned. "Just thinking how lucky I am." Daniel tipped his hat. "Me too, Mrs. Reed, me too." And as the sun set over the wide-open prairie, Clara knew that no matter what came next, they had built a life worth holding on to, together.
Like, share, and subscribe.